Hi. Oh, so I can start, right? Yes. Well, welcome. There's two of you as far as I understand, so that's not so many, but I still hope you're going to enjoy or learn something or find something interesting about what I'm going to say here today. And basically what I wanted to show you is how to migrate Joomla 3 data to Joomla 6 data, as there are still quite a few people using Joomla 3 and we want to migrate them to Joomla 6. There's more ways than one to do that, of course. So the one way I'm going to show you is how you can start with a clean website. So you're not migrating the existing site by updating Joomla and updating the extension, but you start with a clean website and then you export data from the old website and you import the data into the new website. The things I want to show you to migrate is the Joomla content. Content have categories, so we're going to migrate the categories as well. And content is also linked to users, and users is something you also need to migrate when moving from one version to another, even if it's just for a few maintainers and you don't have any actual users signing up. So the way I'm going to present this is with ROCSVI, where we have created some migration templates for all the different parts of Joomla. And you can see in the Joomla 3 site that the example migration templates, they all start with the word example and they all end with the word migrate, so you know they are the example migration templates. You usually do not have to change anything about them, except in case you're using custom fields, for example. The custom fields can be migrated together with the Joomla content. The only thing is that when we create the example templates, we have no idea what custom fields you have, of course. So I'll show you for the migration template. We have the fields that are used to migrate. So it's the ID of the article, the title, the alias, the intro text, full text, category, etc., etc. There are 28 fields now, but often you have custom fields as well, so you would add those fields to this list here, which can be done with the new button or with a quick add, which show you all the available fields that are there. And if you have custom fields, then they will be in this list as well. So for today, we're keeping it, we're sticking with the basic migration template because I think it can show enough what it can do. So basically after you install ROCSVI in your old Joomla site, you can simply go to the list of templates, find your export migration template and click run, and it will export the file. You can see you get a pop-up with the file being downloaded because that's how the template is set up to download the file to your computer. And if we open that file, you can see all the data is there. We have the category ID. Now the left value is something you don't need to worry about too much, but we need it in there. So once Joomla updates the left and right values, they are in the correct order. The path, because Joomla categories is not just for the content, but for all extensions that support categories. So that's why I'll see the content here, banners, context, news feeds, and even users, they have categories apparently. So a title, alias, all the fields, and we put all the fields in the migration template that we think are necessary to do the migration. And if we go to the content categories, you can see all the categories here as well. Now we go to our Joomla 6 website, and we can see the categories if we are logged in. You see we only have the uncategorized here. So what we do now is we go to ROC-CI templates, and we find our migration template. I want to take one step back because what you can see is this one is called example Joomla export migrate, and the corresponding one is the example Joomla categories import migrate, because you export on the Joomla 3 site and you import on the Joomla 6 website. Now on this template as well as in the Joomla 3 site, you just click run. It expects you to upload a file, so that's the file that we just downloaded from our export. You select that. You can click preview to see if the data looks the same here as it does in our spreadsheet. Now you can see all the data is there with the descriptions and everything. Now then we hit start import. And it runs and it runs. And we have some errors, which doesn't have to be a problem, because it says another category with the same category as the same alias. We see here that the uncategorized category already exists, and it apparently exists here as well. Or it's, yeah, here it is. So ROC-CI is just telling you, okay, sorry, this category already exists, so I cannot add it again. But if we refresh the page, you can see we have the same categories here as well. So now we have exported the categories. We can export the content as well, or let's say, let's do users first, because the articles are often linked to a user who created them. And to export users, you also need to export a user group, because when you do a migration, you really have to think about which data is going to be migrated and how are they related. Because if I import users without a user group, the users are not assigned to any user group. Which might not be a problem if you decide to rearrange the users and the user groups and everything. But in this case, I assume you want to keep the same user groups. Now, if you check the user group migration template and you check the fields, you see we have some fields here too, but this is just a much smaller export, because there's just not so much data in there. So the same goes here, you just click run, and you get your file. And you see here all the user groups, public, guest, manager, administrator, everything. And in the Joomla 6 site, yeah, it's probably already starting to get a bit boring, but you find the example user group import migrate. You click run. You select the file you just downloaded, and then you do the preview. Now you see the user groups are here as well. And then we click, so we can check the current user groups. Where is it? Users, groups. As you can see, we already have some groups here. Let's see what it tells us. The one thing you should know about ROC-CI, that if you import the ID field, so this is the database ID field, If it already exists, you have the option to override it. To update the data. So super users is group 8 here. In the old side, it also is group 8. But if group 8 here would be, for example, shop suppliers, then after import, the super user group will be called shop suppliers. So that's something to keep in mind. But with a migration, we usually assume you want to keep the IDs because often everything is related based on ID. Now then we hit the import. And we have an error. Oh no. The problems of live demos. So what happens here is that there's apparently an entry in the database that is not correct because a database ID of 0 can't exist. This is actually an error we quite often get questions about because people do not know what to do. But yeah, we'll have to clean up the database to get that to work. Because if you get an error, it will stop. The one thing we're going to be doing in one of our future releases, that this error is no longer going to stop the import. It will continue, it will just skip the record with that error. And let's see. Let me take that file. Yeah, so there was one user group in there that has some kind of problem within the database itself. And then you have to find out which entry in the database is causing that problem by simply going to the database and check which entry in the database has a value of 0. Because any database ID with 0 shouldn't exist. And now you see the user group updated. This one is not added because of a duplicate entry, because the guest with ID 1 already exists, so it cannot add it. And that's because you already have the guest user group in our system. Yeah, line 6 it says missing required field title because it was an empty line in the file, so that is something that can be ignored. So whenever you check the result of your import, yeah, you might want to make sure that you understand why there's an error, why it's skipped, and whether it's a problem or not. Yeah, and here you can see there's an empty record. That shouldn't be the case. No, we can delete it. Oh, apparently I belong to the user group. That's nice. Okay, so when the categories are done, we can migrate the content. Again, just click the run button. Downloads the file. You go back to our list where we have the content, import, migrate. Oh, we didn't do the users yet. Sorry. One step back. So we had the user groups done. We still need to migrate the users. Where you click run, you get a file that I can show you. So you can see the password in here, but it's encrypted, which should be encrypted. And you'll see here that the name of the field is password crypt, because that way ROCCI knows that you're importing an encrypted password. If you would just use the password field, we expect a plain password that ROCCI will encrypt and store for you, which can be useful when you're transferring accounts or creating accounts on the fly. So it's not a problem to have the password in there. And then the users import migrate, we select again the file that we downloaded. Now we check if everything here is fine. And then we can start the import. Duplicate entry admin, and that's correct because when you import a user name that already exists, the Joomla does not allow duplicate usernames, so we'll get an error saying that the user already exists, basically. Let me take that one out. So I updated the file, and if you run it again, the admin user is out, and let's see what it does now. It has an empty entry in the database. And we start the import again. And let's see where we go now. So now it says user added. And you see here that a user is assigned to a user group with the name customer group example. But the user group doesn't exist, so ROCCI will report that it cannot find that user group, so the user cannot be added to that user group. Again, it's always good to check the output after an import to make sure everything is as you expect. So now we have the categories, we have the users, and now we can do the content import. First we have to run our export of content. When the file is downloaded, then we run the import. That was the export that I clicked. Content import. You select the file. Again, you can check the preview if everything is fine with all the data as you expect it to be. Then you click Start Import. And it says now all the fields are added and updated. And then if you check our content list articles, we have a long list of articles. So just to get back to what I said earlier is that the ID is very important. The migration templates assume that the IDs are available and can be used so that there's no other item that exists in your website that already has that ID, because that way it will be recreated on the new website with the same IDs. This is especially important for categories and content items and stuff, where you import the menu items. Because with the menu items, you often link to a category or an article, and that's always ID based. So if you do a migration, you want to keep that ID as much the same as possible. I was going to say any questions, but I'm not in the room myself, so we'll do that afterwards. So where do these example templates come from? After you've installed ROCSVI, you can go to maintenance, ROCSVI, and there you have the option to install example templates. And there are example templates for all the Joomla parts: the categories, content, custom fields, menus, modules, tags, users. And in this case, Hikashop and Virtumart is installed as well. So you can choose those example templates as well. We also have example templates for Phocacart that we support, and J2 Commerce. But these example templates give you a way to get started with some basic templates, and which you can then extend as you like to. That's the whole part regarding the migration. Then I still have something I wanted to show you. Another feature within ROCSVI, and those we call rules. And the rules need to be enabled before they can be used. And if you're a bit of a programmer yourself, you can also write your own rules, because these are just simple Joomla plugins. And you can copy one of the existing ones and just change her and make your own options available within there. Or if you want to have something changed or added to an existing one, please tell us and we can have a look at that. So what you can do with rules is you can manipulate how data is imported or exported. We have the conditional rule, where you can do a comparison. If something is equal to, greater than, less than, if it contains a value or if it's empty. And in the new release, there will also be an option if a value is between. For example, if you want to export shipping cost, but the price of the product is between 0 and 10 euro, then the shipping cost is 5 euro. If the product price is between 11 and 20, then the shipping cost is 4 euro. You could have a field in your export template where you say that, well, if the value is greater or less than 5, then replace the value from another field with the value 5 euro for a shipping cost, for example. Then we also have the skip rule, which is used to skip records. So, for example, you want to export certain records from your shop, except the records that have, for example, let's say the word blue in the title. And then you can say, well, I want to skip records that match this text blue. And then any record that is exported that has the word blue in the title will not be exported. You can also choose a regular expression. They are more powerful, but also more complex. And you can also do date expressions. So if you have a date field in your products or in your content that say you only want to export the articles that were published after January 1st, 2025, or you want to skip the ones before January 2025, I should say, then that can be done with this. Or just simply empty fields. So if you're exporting articles where a certain custom field is empty, then you can say, well, skip this record because you only want to export articles where the custom field is filled in. We have a margin rule, which is usually used for shop products, where you can add a certain percentage to the price. For example, you get a list of products from your supplier, and this keyboard should cost €100 for you to pay them, but you want to sell it 120. You can add a percentage, 20% markup on the price. It can be a percentage or it can be an actual value. So if you say 20 as value, then there will be just a value of 20 added to the price. And you can choose the operation which should be done, if it should be multiplication and then a subtraction or division. You can check prices if they're equal to or greater than or lower than, and so more determine how the prices should be modified. Multi-replace rule is, I guess, the most used rule, because the find and replace option here is used a lot. So in a certain that you import or export, you can find a value and then replace it with something. Also have multiple values that you want to check. So what people, for example, do is when they need to export categories, but in your categories, your category is called plants, but the reading system wanted it to be called bushes for some reason. Then on export, the field that the word plants will be replaced by bushes. And this is also regular text replacement, or you can use a regular expression if you want to have a more complex way of replacing that. And this, so if it has done this replace and add another thing it needs to do after that, for example, we need to uppercase the words that it matches. Then you can do another one. You can have a value added after that word, so let's dash 1, 2, 3. And so you can have multiple operations in one go for one field. Now with the multi-replace plugin. The combine field is used often to combine fields, as the name says. So for example, you have an import file where you have images in 3 or 4 different columns, because it can have up to 4 images. But for import, those 4 images need to be in a single plugin. You can combine those 4 fields. So let's say image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4. And then the target could be a picture. And then it will be combined, and then you can, it depends on how it needs to have it defined. And then, so your import file will have 4 columns, but it will be converted to a single column called picture. And then the 4 images will be separated by a tilde character. And then if empty value should be defined, usually this is set to no, because otherwise image 1 empty, and then maybe image 4. That makes no sense. So you would only get image 1 and image 4 if image 2 and 3 are empty. And the last rule that we supply is field copy rule, and that can happen if you need to have the same story in multiple fields but with different names. And then you can say, I have the image field and I want to have it complete to the image field, but also to the picture field. And that way you can have the same value in multiple places without having to add more columns to your field, to your template. So I can show you one where you can do an export. We have the content export here, so let's see which articles we have. We have here a wool hat that we can export. Then if we create a rule, the wool hat rule, we're doing a multi-replace. Here we do a find and replace. We look for wool hat, and we're gonna say it's a Maringo hat. Not multiple values, always replace. The separator is used if you have multiple values to find or replace. Then you can do it like this. So you don't have to create 4 different sections to add one replacement every time, but you can have multiple replacements in one location. For now, we keep it regular text because we want to have an exact match of wool hat. Now then we can save it. I'll save and close it. My templates, I have the content export, and the rule needs to be applied to a single field because we know the title of the article is wool hat. And then when you edit a field, you can select, well, I have the rule set incorrectly. Apologies. Because it's an import, but we're doing an export, so it needs to be applied to export. So if the title field that we know is Maringo, is the wool hat, then we save and close. And if you have added a rule to your template field, it gets a little wand behind it. And in the rule itself, if you go to the rule, you have a button for linked templates, and it will show you which templates are linked to that button, to that rule. So you can always find out where you're using your rules. And now if we run the Joomla content export, let's open the file and see if it worked. And we see here that the wool hat, because this is the alias that tells us the original name was wool hat, has been replaced with Maringo hat. Yeah, so that's the way you can really modify your import exports to whatever the target system needs, because sometimes it's not only to what is in your own system, but where you're going to export it to, or where you're getting the data from might not be exactly in the format you need. We see that often with XML imports, they often need some massaging to be able to be imported. And the export is now being downloaded, but you can also export to different locations. I need to, no, it's done, that was. Export template. So when you create a new template, we give you a wizard to get started where you can select your option. So the export can be a download, but it can also be saved on the server of your website, or we can save it on an FTP server. You can email the export file, you can export to another database, and you can also export to Google Sheets. So you have a lot of options where to send the file to. It can also be multiple locations at once. So you can send it to Google Sheets, but you can also save it on your own server. You can also download it at the same time. So there's a lot of options of where to send your export file. And the same goes with the import. You can load it from your computer, you can load it from the file from a server, but it can also be a folder. So if you have a folder with 10 import files, it will walk through the 10 files and import all those 10 files. You can import from a remote URL, where if it's the URLs behind the login, you can actually supply the details to log in automatically before downloading the file. From an FTP or an SFTP server, you can load it from another database, which can be the same database as your Joomla connection, or from a completely remote database that is running somewhere else. Even from a text field, that's basically, if you start it, you get a text field where you can paste in your data. And as we said, you can export it to Google Sheets, but you can also import it from Google Sheets. Lots of ways to customize the import and the export. And there's a lot more options, but I think we're going to wrap this up and go over to questions. Am I correct? Yes. I can hear you from afar, but I think it's doable. Hi, how are you, Jay? Yes. Yes, correct. What I see a lot is that a lot of people, of course, migrate from in the early days 1.5 to 2.5 to 3, 4. And what happens when you keep doing that in the same website, that sometimes you get some strange situations that you can't really explain because of the data that has been migrated for so many times. So sometimes it's cleaner to start with a clean website and just copy over the data that you actually need. And I think for that purpose, that RFC is very suitable. If you just want to do a full migration with a single button, that can be done too. I mean, there's extensions for that as well, of course. But in this way, you have, I believe, more control over the whole migration process of what you migrate and how you migrate the data. Exactly. Yeah, and like I showed with the rules, you can also do some things on the fly, right? I mean, if you export the data, you say, well, I know I'm not going to need this, and this data. You can create some rules for that, and I set those on the fields, and then you won't even get the data exported, so you don't even have to clean it up manually afterwards. Do something else, or it completely skips the record on export. That's possible too, of course. So there's something for both, right? I mean, if you migrate the whole website from one version to another because Joomla can do that, that is fine as well. But sometimes I think, especially after a lot of years, it might be a good idea to sometimes just start completely clean. So you know you have no old data hanging somewhere or so. That might be giving you a headache from time to time. Because I worked on websites too that have been migrated over the years, and there's just some things we can't explain. And if you do it in a clean website, it doesn't happen. So, yeah, what is faster? Do you want to spend all your time trying to find out why the one website is behaving weird, or do you just start cleaning so you have no old things left? I think the latter one is my personal preference. After so many years, it might be good to do a clean install. I do the same actually with my own code. now for Joomla 6, and we're rewriting everything again from scratch, just to get rid of the old stuff. Does that answer your question? Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for the question. There are no such templates. Not because we don't want them, just because we haven't created them yet. We are looking into WordPress for typo, because WordPress is becoming more and more a question. But honestly, Typo 3, I can't remember having anybody ask me about a migration from Typo 3 to Joomla. Yeah, so Elisa also on her blog wrote a query that you can run on the on the WordPress website to get the data out of WordPress and import it into Joomla with ROCSVI. But as long as the other system, be it WordPress, be it Typo 3, be it any other CMS, can produce an export, yeah, 9 out of 10 times it can be imported by just mapping the correct fields. So what Joomla might call a title, the other side might call a heading, what we might call a category, they might call a taxonomy. So if you map those fields together, then it really doesn't matter how the other file has the data or the column names, as long as it's structured data, of course, a CSV file, an XML file, or JSON or something, then it can be imported, no problem. You just have to make the connections from the old system names to the Joomla names. You're welcome. Yeah, since there were 2 people in the room, I had 2 questions. I think we had everybody, or? Hi, I heard hello, but I don't know who. Oh, Sherelle. Hi, Sherelle. I'm doing fine. Just too bad I'm here and not there. Yeah, no problem. And if any of you have any questions, like I said to Jens earlier, I'm basically every day on MetaMost as well. So just hit me up if you have any questions, no problem. Enjoy the rest of your Joomla Day Germany. Or should I say DACH, because it's Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, right? Okay, bye-bye.